Hello, friends, and it's Friday. Great job staying with it all week long. Like I said, we're into our second to last month of reading through the New Testament this year, so you're doing great with that. We always want to get into the Word daily so that the Word gets into us. Now, we're looking today at John chapter 11, which is predominantly dedicated to the raising of Lazarus from the dead. A very familiar story to us. And so, in terms of new discovery, I don't know that we're going to find that here, but that's not our purpose for coming to the Word. We come to the Word daily, seeing where God is working in that Word and how God's revealing Himself and what He's showing us about Himself there, so that we're certain that we never want to apply that to our own life personally, and then we go about revealing that to unbelievers as well. So today, I want us to focus in on Martha's response, because Jesus is going to come to Bethany, and Martha's going to go out and meet Him, and I want you to see how she responds to Him and what we can learn from that in terms of our own personal experience with our Lord and how we engage others with the gospel. Start with me in verse 17. John 11, verse 17. When Jesus arrived, he found that Lazarus had already been in the tomb 4 days. Bethany was near Jerusalem, less than 2 miles away. Many of the Jews had come to Martha and Mary to comfort them about their brother. As soon as Martha heard that Jesus was coming, she went to meet him, but Mary remained seated in the house. Then Martha said to Jesus, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother wouldn't have died. Yet even now I know that whatever you ask from God, God will give you." "Your brother will rise again," Jesus told her. Martha said to him, "I know that he will rise again in the resurrection of the last day." Jesus said to her, "I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me, even if he dies, will live. Everyone who lives and believes in me will never die. Do you believe this?" "Yes, Lord," she told him. "I believe you're the Messiah, the Son of God, who comes into the world." All right, so here we see Martha's interaction with Jesus. First of all is the sense of frustration and disappointment. She comes to him. We're told it's 4 days. You've heard this before, so I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time there. There was a belief in the Jewish world that the spirit kind of hovered around the body for 3 days, but when it saw no life, no physical life present, on the 4th day it would depart. And so in this case, the 4th day is the final, that's like the verification day, that a person is officially dead. There's no possibility of them coming back to life. That's not a coincidence, and it's not like Jesus lost track of time, was delayed, because the verse says he discovered he'd already been, Jesus knew that. Jesus was right on time. And so Martha coming to him, and of course Martha had already had some interaction with him. He knew these 3 people, Mary, Martha, and Lazarus. They were good friends. Jesus had fellowship with them before at the home of Lazarus. Mary had anointed his feet, so there's already a close connection here. But you can hear disappointment in Martha's voice, isn't it? Verse 21, "Lord, if you had been here." So it's like she's saying, hey, you could have stopped this. You could have intervened already. But you have to give her some credit. She even says it in verse 22, "Yet even now I know that whatever you ask from God, God will give you." So it's like she said, hey, you could have stopped this early on, but I believe that you can still do something. And that's where Jesus comes back and says, "Your brother will rise again." She, of course, can't connect that with his miracle working ability in terms of bringing somebody back to life. She says, "Oh, I know he'll rise again in the resurrection." And that's where Jesus said, and that's where the purpose for Jesus' delay and the purpose for what he's about to do in this miracle are revealed. "I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me, even if he dies, will live. Everyone who lives, believes in me, will never die." And then the statement, "Do you believe?" And of course, it goes back to something I said Wednesday. And I want you to take you there for just a quick moment. Back to John chapter 2, or ahead to John chapter 20, verses 30 through 31. Jesus performed many other signs in the presence of his disciples that are not written in this book. But these are written so that you may believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God, and that believing you may have life in his name. So John's telling us that, hey, the miracles that I've recorded are just the miracles that I was divinely inspired to record. I haven't put them all, there wasn't enough room. And you could fill the world with the volumes of miracles. However, the ones I have recorded, he says, have been written so that you may believe. And of course, in the case of Lazarus being raised, he says it right here, "Do you believe?" It was to prompt a belief in who Jesus is and what he was here to accomplish and do. "Yes, Lord," she says, "I believe you're Messiah. I believe you're the Son who's come into the world." He wanted the people to believe that he was the resurrection and the life. He was the promise of new life in him. And that was his goal. That's why he delayed, That's why now that he's here, he's not acting just in response to the mourning and the sorrow of Mary and Martha, or the people for that matter. But you also do notice that it says in verse 19, many of the Jews had come. That's exactly what he wanted. He wanted them to witness this miracle so that they might believe, and of course so they would report that to the religious leaders. Of course, later on it's going to say they hear about this, they get together real quickly and say, we got to do something. This guy is gaining attention, he's gaining popularity, he's gaining a following, we've got to stop this now. And that would ultimately compel them to have him murdered. But here's the key word: do you believe? Do you believe? Well, those of us who call ourselves believers, followers of Christ, we do believe. We have placed our faith in him. And yet there are still some who don't believe. There are still some who hear a story like the story of Lazarus and say that's ridiculous. Nobody can raise anybody from the dead. Nobody can do something like that. But that's why this was here. This is here to demonstrate who Jesus is and the power that was working through him, so that by us placing our faith in him, we would receive his salvation and we would receive the promise of the resurrection. And that's the message we now go out and share, friends. When we share with others and we encourage them to read like the Gospel of John. It's no accident that when you're dealing with unbelievers, one of the main books you can encourage them toward is the book of John. Because as it said later, as I read to you, John 20, 30, and 31, these have been written so that you might believe. Believe in who Jesus is, believe in what he has done through his death and his resurrection, and believe what he makes available by grace through faith to those who would put their faith and hope in him. And here it is. Jesus says, hey, guys, the reason why I delayed was for your benefit. The reason why I delayed Martha was for your benefit. The reason why I delayed Mary was for your benefit. The reason why I delayed Jews was for your benefit and for our benefit as well. And so as we read stories or the records of the miracles, we need to remember that these miracles are provided so that we can believe. Believe into salvation, and then also believe that God is still working in our circumstances and situations, regardless of whether we think he's a little bit late getting there or whether we think he's right on time. Doesn't matter. He's always on time according to his divine purpose and in the revelation of his divine power. And we see that here. Well, it's been a great week in the Word. Let's start the next week off well. Also, let's commit. We need to be together for worship. We need to come together in the celebration of who Jesus is and in what he's doing in our life and in the world today. There's so much chaos. There's so much confusion, so much calamity happening. And if we're not careful, we get drawn into that. That's why we come together in worship. Because in worship, we celebrate Jesus. We sing of his majesty. We sing of his miracle-working power. We sing about his identity as the Messiah. That's so we get caught up in him, so we're overwhelmed by who he is. And then we focus and we dig into his word, so that that word then transforms our life. So friend, make the commitment now. Prioritize worship now. Parents, make that commitment now for your children. Don't let your children be the determiner of where you go and what you do. You be the parent. You be the responsible party here. You go ahead and say, hey, we're going to go to worship first. We're going to go to small group, and then we're going to get involved in some other things that we can enjoy as a family. But worship comes first. Make it a priority. I'll tell you what, friends, when you prioritize worship and you come here ready, you're not exhausted from a Saturday, you say how late you, but you come here ready to praise our Lord, you leave here with a cup that just keeps on overflowing. And that's what it's all about. Well, I love you, friends. I've enjoyed our week in the Word together, and I'm looking forward to starting this next week off in the Word and in a time of worship. And until we are together, live sent.